But this is the first time they've met ministers since the new Labour government was elected. And even more significantly, today's meeting paves the way for the involvement of the political wing of the IRA in the full substantive talks in September on the future of Northern Ireland. Gerry Adams made clear what their demands would be.
We're an Irish Republican Party. We want to see an end to British rule on this island. We want to see the people of this island living together in unity and in peace, and we will certainly be arguing for a strategy which the British government should join with the Irish government and the rest of us to bring that about.
The delegation went in to meet Mo Mowlam, but there were no facilities to record the handshake between them. The involvement of Sinn Féin in talks is still a sensitive business, but ministers are positive.
We hope that when the time comes for the Secretary of State to make a decision about the ceasefire, that all will be well, and that of course the talks process will start in September.
During the last IRA ceasefire, it was 9 months before the then Secretary of State, Sir Patrick Mayhew, met Gerry Adams, and that was in Washington, not here in Stormont. This meeting is taking place within weeks of the ceasefire being restored, and that in itself is being seen as a confidence-building measure. These talks are relatively easy for the government. The big question is what part the Unionists will play in the main negotiations in the autumn. John Draper, ITN, Stormont.
And those are the stories making headlines at this hour from NBC News and MSNBC. I'm Nanette Hansen.
Nanette, thank you very much. A patient goes into a hospital to have his right leg amputated. Well, instead, his left leg is removed. A doctor mistakenly orders feeding solution pumped into the dialysis tube of a patient, and days later, that patient dies. Going to a hospital for so-called routine surgery can kill you, and that's what Dr. Sheldon Blau learned when he almost died after surgery at his own hospital. Now he's written the book, How to Get Out of the Hospital Alive. The title says it all. Dr. Blau joins us now. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Perry.
What happened?
Well, I went for what's called an angioplasty. An angioplasty is a procedure designed to prevent a heart attack. Instead, the angioplasty ruptured my coronary artery and necessitating immediate surgery, and a variety of complications occurred following the surgery.
Well, now, how common are occurrences like this?
So
Tell us it's very rare.
Okay, no, I would love to tell you that it's very rare, but the reason that we wrote the book, we being Elaine Schimberg and myself, was because it's not at all rare. As a matter of fact, a recent Harvard study estimates that 180,000 people die from hospital errors alone. In addition to that, another complication that I developed was a gram-positive staphylococcal infection in my bloodstream. The CDC estimates that 80,000 people, 80,000, let me tell you how many 80,000 is. The total number of people who die from AIDS every year is 40 to 50,000. The total number of people who died in the Vietnam 10-year war on our side was 57,000. So 80,000 deaths from staphylococcal infection is absolutely enormous.
You know, let's back up a little bit and
Sure.
explain to people who might not understand. A staph infection is something that you really can catch at a hospital because that's where you'll find that type of bacteria. Is that right?
Well, not only that, not only will you find the staph in the hospital, you'll find super staphs that have been treated for long periods of time with antibiotics and that have become essentially resistant to other antibiotics. As a matter of fact, despite the fact that I've been practicing for some 35 years and been teaching medical students and house staff for another 30 years, I was not prepared to see certain diseases that were due solely to antibiotics and staphylococcal infection.
How did you ultimately get better after your problem at the hospital?
Well, it's a very good question and a very hard one to answer, really. I got better because of primarily my wife. My wife is and also was my advocate. I mean, was in the hospital sense. She stayed with me and prevented a variety of things from occurring that might have occurred had she not been there. So the first thing is, how did I recover? I recovered because I had my wife there. The second reason that I recovered is because of God. I became far more spiritual and far more religious as a result of the experience. And last of all, I was, which is God's work, lucky.
The bottom line, though, is we all have to use hospitals, unfortunately, at one point or another. And sometimes it's not unfortunate. You go in to have a baby or do a number of things that are not negative. We do have to use hospitals. What can people do?
Of course. As a matter of fact, The point of the book is exactly what the patient, as his own advocate, as his own policymaker in the hospital, can do to prevent bad things from happening. And we have at the back of the book 10 things that you can do to prevent problems in the hospital. And before I go into the 10 things or a discussion of some of them, let me just tell you the following. Our book is due to my 30 years of private practice, and in addition to that, of course, my hospitalized experience. Some of the things that we describe in the hospital are very simple. For instance, errors are made in medication all the time. As a matter of fact, it's the 180,000 deaths that probably have to do with medication errors. We suggest very strongly that the first thing you do when you go into a hospital is make sure that there's no one with the same last name on the floor that you have. And if indeed that's the case, so that when you check into the ward, you simply ask the ward nurse, is there another person?
Or Mr. or Mrs. Smith.
Exactly. If there are poor Mr. and Mrs. Smith, just ask to be put on another floor.
Seriously?
Oh, sure, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I had been doing that for 30 years. A wise physician taught me that a long time ago. And the numerous nurses that I have as patients in my office tell me right on. That's exactly where mistakes occur. Namely, two patients, same name, same medication nurse.
All right, doctor, we need to take a break.
Sure.
And we're going to do that. When we come back, though, we're going to tell people about some of the various things you can do to make your hospital stay a better one and, in fact, to get out alive. We also want to hear from you. You can call us with your experiences. We can be reached at 1-888-MSNBC-USA. Call us. We want to hear from you. We're going to continue this discussion right after a short break. Stay tuned. This is MSNBC.
Tonight on MSNBC, from the NBC archives, they're tragedies that stopped a world. Unforgettable air disasters on Time and Again, tonight at 10 on MSNBC.
New Downy brings you Downy Care. You get more than fluffy softness. Now it helps keep clothes looking like new.
Keep the new look of it. That's the way you love it. Only Downy does it.
New Downy cares for clothes in the rinse, protecting them from fading. Over time, it helps keep clothes looking like new.
Keep the new look of it. Take the best care of it. Only Downy does it. Come on in.
And only Downy has the Downy ball. Just toss it in for the best fabric care ever. Downy Care.
Each morning with the dawn, a new day's hopes are born. Wake up, got lots to do. Your daughter's counting on you.
Folgers, mountain-grown beans from some of the world's richest coffee regions, brew a winning taste and aroma.
It's that morning waking up call that wakes up the winner in a song. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
We all expect our facial cleanser to clean, but what if it could start reducing the signs of aging the minute you use it? Clinical tests prove a new breakthrough cleanser can actually do this. It combines beta-hydroxy with cleansing microbeads and hydrating moisture. It's proven to help smooth the signs of aging, revealing fresher, newer skin immediately. And the name, Oil of Olay New Daily Renewal Cleanser, proven to help smooth the signs of aging.
For tough jobs you thought only a sponge or rag could do, try new Bounty Rinse and Reuse. One sheet is so durable, it keeps working till the whole job's done. Rinse and Reuse has extra thick quilting for sponge-like durability. To rinse, wring, and reopen, unlike ordinary towels that wad up when wet. So rinse and reuse it till the job's done, then throw it away.
The quilting quicker maker of life.
New Bounty Rinse and Reuse.
Welcome back to MSNBC's Newsfront. We are talking about the book, How to Get Out of the Hospital Alive. We are speaking with its author, Sheldon Blau. Dr. Sheldon Blau. Call us at 1-888-MSNBC-USA. Also here with some of their own tales from the hospital are our MSNBC contributors. With us in our newsroom is Jeff Pollack, a Democratic pollster. And joining us also from Los Angeles, Joseph Perkins, a nationally syndicated columnist for the San Diego Union Tribune. We also want to hear from our viewers as well. Hi there, Joe. How you doing?
Oh, just great. A little hot out here, of course, but probably a lot cooler in the MSNBC headquarters in Secaucus.
Absolutely. Now, moving along from the temperature, Joe, any experience that you've had in the hospital that you want to share, or a question you'd like to ask Dr. Blau?
Well, I've had one major surgery, and that went quite well. It was for arthroscopic surgery on my knee. But one thing that occurred to me, I was taken aback by those statistics that 180,000 lives are lost each year due to negligence or just downright incompetence in hospitals. And I'm wondering, Doctor, if there is any role for the government to play in terms of oversight, because it's one thing to have a patient advocate, you know, to have your spouse or to have some loved one there at your side, but there's only so much they can do, because once you're in the operating room or once you're somewhere else, there's really not much they can do at that point.
Well, I think that they can do a great deal. As a matter of fact, the advocate is charged with a great responsibility, the responsibility of being certain that the doctor's orders are indeed carried out as far as medications goes. Now, the study that said that 180,000 people die as a result of treatment errors is a recent Harvard School of Public Health study. There are indeed many things and many ways that this 180,000 can be cut down. One of the ways, and that's why we propose this advocate system, one of the things that happens all the time is that medication errors occur, not only to the wrong patient, but sometimes the medication is not the right medication. For instance, a physician writing an order for Prilosac 20 milligrams, that can easily be confused with Prozac 20 milligrams, and as a matter of fact, that happens all the time. So the role of the advocate is not simply to watch in a blind way, but to watch very specifically and be certain that the doctor's orders as far as medications indeed are carried out. On that same subject, Joe, because this is such an important point, 44% of hospital medication errors are because of a bad admix of medicines. In other words, one medication is contraindicated while the other one is being given.
I'm going to jump in because we're running out of time, and we do have a caller who's waiting. Barbara in Ohio. Barbara, what happened to you in the hospital?
Well, I'm a physician's wife, and I wonder what Dr. Blau thinks of the physician's wife syndrome. I had 8 hours of surgery, a unnecessary hysterectomy. I know that sounds unbelievable for a physician's wife. An abdominoplasty, and I received no pain medication because the nurses weren't familiar with the PAC pumps.
Right.
So I went for 8 hours, and this happened 2 nights in a row where I received nothing for pain.
Oh, how awful.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Thank you so much for that question. The question about pain management, it's been estimated in this country, in any given hospital, particularly in patients who have chronic diseases, often terminal diseases, that they are under-medicated as far as pain medication goes. Physicians are frightened to prescribe what they consider to be excessive medication. So you're absolutely right. And as far as the syndrome of the physician's wife, it seems as if to me also, bad things seem to happen not only to physicians' wives, but as you see from our book, to physicians as well.
All right, we're going to go to Frank now in Florida. Barbara, thank you for that call. Frank, and what's the experience you would like to share with Dr. Blau?
I had a myelogram a couple years ago, and a doctor injected a dye into my spine. And ever since that, the nerves in everything from my thoracic and lumbar vertebrae down, what deals with my internal organs and my legs, are just, the nerves are just totally shot, and no doctors would help me out with this whatsoever. Is there somebody I can contact with or something like this?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, what happened to you, Frank, is not an uncommon experience. I would like to back up on your experience and say that we suggest strongly in the book that before any procedure, particularly a myelogram, is done, that you find out why it's being done and you find out what information is going to be obtained. And most important, as unfortunately happened to you, you find out what can go wrong. Because you may decide that, given all of the information, and by the way, there's a marvelous section in the book on patients' rights, You have the right, every patient has the right to have that information before the procedure is done. I had something similar happen to me when they wanted to do a procedure that I didn't think was right, and I objected to it, and I objected to it not from the point of view of being a physician, but from the point of view of being a patient. So what's happened to you is unfortunately not uncommon. There are neurologic institutes that take care of syndromes very much like yours.
Frank, thank you for the call. Cliff, very quickly, Cliff in Georgia, you've got about 10 seconds. What happened to you?
My wife wasn't given a pregnancy test prior to 3 major procedures, and as a result, she went through a lot of radiation during the 3 procedures. We were all putting a stent into her kidney. She's been having a lot of kidney problems, and as a result, now we've just found out that she had a lot more radiation than they originally thought that she had, and now we're having to go through a high-risk pregnancy counseling and genetic counseling to see if it's affected the baby or to what degree if it has. And I'd also like to add that...
Cliff, unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut you off, which I don't like to do. I want to wish you, obviously, the best of luck with your baby, and I'm going to have to tell the rest of our callers and our viewers the name of the book, How to Get Out of the Hospital Alive. The author is Dr. Sheldon Blau. Dr. Blau, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. We do need to take a break. With the budget deal signed, what is next for President Clinton? You can find out at 2 Eastern Time when he holds a news conference at the White House. Next, we're going to get some early opinions from NBC's Tim Russert and Lisa Myers. That's right after this short break. You are watching Newsfront on MSNBC. Stay with us.
Now from MSNBC.com, when stories break and stocks shift, get the latest updates delivered right to your computer with news alerts. Now from MSNBC.com.
Want to have some fun and do some good too? Volunteer your time to a kid who needs it.
A PC is a machine. It just wires, chips, and soldered connections that process the bad work just as efficiently as the good. And even the best of them doesn't really care if right now is maybe a bad time to go down. That's why, if a situation arises, it's sensible for your business to have a PC from AST, who's got people picking up the phone 7 days a week and at hours when you should be out socializing.
AST Bravo PCs featuring Intel Pentium 2 processors.
Time to get dressed. We're late. Band practice after school. Mom! Jimmy, don't forget your homework. Quick, pick out something to drink. Mom! Hurry up. Okay, we got purple boxes, soda, and Sunny D.
Grab a Sunny D. Yeah. Sunny Delight singles have the great taste kids love and the same vitamins as big Sunny Delight.
Okay, guys, let's get in the car.
But Mom, it's Saturday.
I knew that. How about a picnic?
Mom needs a vacation. Sunny Delight, the good stuff kids go for.
If we look relaxed, it's because we got a great night's sleep in our new Craftmatic Monaco adjustable bed.
And I'm happy because of the 30% savings we received.
Well, you too can save 30% on a Monaco adjustable bed. Just call toll-free for this 30% off certificate.
Monaco is the ultimate in bedroom luxury. Standard features include this high-quality orthopedic mattress,
Fingertip adjustability controls for head and feet, dual variable speed massage,
and warm, comforting therapeutic heat. To save 30% off the Craftmatic Monaco of your choice,
call toll-free and get this special 30% off savings certificate by mail.
but hurry, this offer is limited.
So, call for your 30% off savings certificate and full details about Monaco right away.
Call toll-free 1-800-348-9800. That's 1-800-348-9800. Toll-free 1-800-348-9800.
MSNBC Prime Time, the best of NBC News all night long. Catch the show that makes using computers easy on the site with Soledad O'Brien. The best interviewers in the business talk to the people making news on internet. An hour of news at a time you can watch on the news with Brian Williams. Relive history from the NBC News archives with Jane Pauley on Time and Again. Plus news updates every 15 minutes and a whole lot more. MSNBC, when you really want to know.
I'm Chris Holmes, and this is Amelia. I don't think anybody is ever really prepared to be a father. My wife and I, we share all the responsibilities. My job's the laundry. Amelia generates a lot of tough stains. Obviously, I had to find some help. I found the Tide website. It's stuff that all parents need to know. Tide with bleach gets out most tough stains Amelia gets into, better than other detergents I've tried. And it helps colors stay bright. It helps when you know what you're doing. If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide. You have to learn fast to survive.
To get a fresh mountain spring scent in your clothes, you could add mountain snow, wildflowers, or spring water to your wash. Or just wash them in new Mountain Spring Tide. The same great cleaning, now with a fresh Mountain Spring scent. Try new Mountain Spring Tide. Look for it along with regular Tide.
My daughter tried Tylenol, but hours later, the headache came back.
Her doctor suggested a leave.
Just 2 can work all day. I had to take 4 Advil or 8 extra-strength Tylenol.
Nothing stronger than a leave.
Aleve.
Welcome back, everyone, to MSNBC's News Front. I'm Perry Pelz. At approximately 2 o'clock Eastern Time, President Clinton is scheduled to lay out his roadmap for the rest of the year. He will do so in a news conference on the South Lawn of the White House. We will carry that live for you right here on Newsfront. But for a quick preview, we are now joined by NBC's Washington Bureau Chief and mediator of Meet the Press, Tim Russert. We are also joined by NBC's Lisa Myers, who is in Washington as well. Hi to both of you.
Hi, Perry. Perry.
Tim, let me begin with you. Is the president still basking in that post-balanced budget glow? And I assume that today's press conference is not a coincidence in terms of timing.
Well, Mike McCurry is saying that the president promised to meet the press at regular intervals. It just so happens today they're going to announce that the deficit has fallen to $37 billion. That's an 80% reduction since Bill Clinton became president, and you're going to hear that referred to several times during this news conference. The president also wants to pay his respects to the victims of the plane crash in Guam, Perry, and then talk about his education and environmental initiatives. But bottom line is, yes, the warm glow of the budget and tax agreement has convinced the president that to take another victory lap, and he'll do that with the press conference today.
Lisa, if that's what's on the president's mind, what does the press want to hear about today? What kind of questions do you think we'll be hearing?
Well, I think there'll be questions, among other things, about what we've been hearing on the Hill during these hearings into campaign finance abuses. What we've shown is a pattern of evidence of a series of hundreds of thousands of dollar contributions coming from overseas, many of them illegal, into the Democratic Party during 1996. Now, these were not done by a bunch of rogue fundraisers. Most of these folks were people with close ties to the president, with easy access to the White House. In some cases, they were the president's friends. And you had this incredible scene of Charlie Tree, a friend of the president's from Little Rock, arriving at the president's legal defense fund with a shopping bag full of hundreds of thousands of dollars to help with the president's legal bills. Now, obviously, there will be questions about that. There will also be questions, I would assume, about what may be the best quote of the money trail story so far, and that is from a California businessman by the name of Chani Chung, who gave $50,000 to get a bunch of Chinese officials into the White House. And he said, it's the way he sees it, quote, the White House is like a subway. You have to put in coins to open the gates. I assume someone will ask the president, is that so?
NBC's White House correspondent David Bloom also joins us right now. David, so far the White House...
Please take your seats.
Sorry, David. So far the White House is saying they see no reason to invoke the Taft-Hartley Act in terms of the UPS strike. Do we expect to hear any change in that position today?
Well, the president will likely be asked about that question. It's not at all clear that that indeed will be the case, because the fact of the matter is today a group of retailers and manufacturers wrote to the president asking him to personally intervene in the strike, and he's sure to be questioned about that, given their claim that this does now have national economic consequences. So the question to be asked of the president is, of course, if you intervened in the baseball strike, the Major League Baseball strike a few years ago, why then are you choosing not to intervene in this strike? And that's one question the president is apt to get.
All right, well, it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say. Tim, let's get back to the old balanced budget issue. I assume that the president will have questions about the line item veto and whether or not he's going to exercise that. What are you hearing about that issue today?
He's extremely reluctant to use it as to the budget and tax deal. One, he thinks it perhaps might violate the spirit of the deal, the consensus, the feel-good notion of agreement between Democrats and Republicans. Secondly, Perry, he knows it's going to be challenged in courts, and he would prefer to have an issue that is a clean one in terms of litigation. So my hunch is he's going to resist using that. He'll probably say they're still considering it, they're still looking at it, but he'll stop far short of making a firm decision about utilizing it regarding the budget and tax bill.
But I can tell you, Perry, that there are some presidential advisors who are very strongly urging him to go ahead and use that in this case. Essentially, they argue that the president wanted the line item veto and that this is a unique opportunity to take a shot at some of that pork that is in the tax bill, millions and millions of dollars of special tax breaks. So there seems to be some conflict in the White House about that.
David Bloom, Tim Russert, and Lisa Myers, thank you very much. Stay tuned to MSNBC. The headlines are up next at the top of the hour. Plus, when the president speaks in just a few moments, we'll bring that to you live right here on Newsfront. Stay with us.
On the serious stories, there is no broadcast more serious than this one. On the stuff around the margins, that's where we have a little fun. Not every newsmaker is a serious character. A lot of them really want to be taken seriously, but oh, heck, we see through that.
The News with Brian Williams, weeknights at 9 p.m. on MSNBC.
Hey, you okay? 17 stitches. Can you believe it? Yeah. I saw the 2x4 that hit you. How's your head? It's gotta hurt. Man, it did. But the doctor gave me Tylenol. Extra strength. Tylenol? With everything they have here? Man, the stuff works. Come on, let's get out of here.
More than aspirin, more than ibuprofen. For the pain of traumatic injuries, Tylenol is recommended the most by doctors.
A 2x4. Don't remind me.
I love my denture cream. I'll trade you this toothpaste for your denture cream. Monty Hall.
Will this denture wearer give up his denture cream?
I'll even throw in mouthwash and a soap.
No deal. Denture cream's minty and cleans much better than soaks. All you need is denture cream.
If you want the ready-to-serve chocolate frosting people say tastes best, you want Duncan Hines Homestyle Frosting. Made with natural chocolate flavor, like homemade. Duncan Hines, just what you want.
Remember when you were young and Dad was always there with that camera of his? And when you went away to college, remember the Nikon you took along that you haven't used since you broke up with what's-his-name? Well, you wouldn't want to sell those memories for anything, but you might want to sell those cameras. Cometa Camera is paying top dollar for any and all resellable cameras, no matter what the age. We're a full-service camera shop ready to take care of all your photo needs. Give us a call and see what we can do for you. Cometa Camera, 253 Route 110, Amityville.
Lord of the Dance began in Ireland. Then it swept through Europe. And now it's taking the U.S. by storm. From Michael Flatley, star of the international hit Riverdance, comes his all-new music and dance spectacular, Lord of the Dance. Magical, sensuous, dazzling, seductive. This incredible TV offer, valued at $24.95, is yours for only $19.95. So act now. Call 1-800-257-5700. Call now.
MSNBC News, when you really want to know.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Brokaw in New York, and very shortly we'll be going to the South Lawn of the White House, where President Clinton will be holding a news conference. We're told that he is going to be very pleased to announce that the federal budget deficit for this year will be the lowest since 1974. It had been projected to come in somewhere in the range of about $67 billion. They now think it'll be about $37 billion. That's the lowest since 1974, when it was well below those numbers, of course, at $7 billion. All of this comes after the good news of the balanced budget agreement between the White House and congressional Republicans. And, of course, no politician anywhere has a better friend than the booming American economy. And that's just what's going on right now. NBC's David Bloom is in the South Lawn of the White House. Any other announcements expected today, David?
We expect the president to lay out what will be his agenda for the fall, talking about entitlement reform and other matters, for example, national education standards, which he's been pushing for. And he's obviously coming out onto the South Lawn of the White House right now. But essentially, other than the budget announcement, and as you say, sort of reveling in the news of yesterday and today about the lower budget deficit, we expect him to say, now that we've accomplished this, this is what I want to articulate for my goals coming around.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Before I begin, let me first say that I join with all Americans in expressing our deepest condolences for the victims of the terrible plane crash yesterday in Guam. I have spoken with Governor Gutierrez And I want to commend him, the hundreds of volunteers, and the United States military personnel who are working so hard on the response and the rescue effort. The National Transportation Safety Board will lead the investigation of the crash with technical assistance from the FAA and other agencies as needed. Now today, I want to briefly review what our nation has accomplished during the first 7 months of this year and to spell out the opportunities and the obligations that we have to continue that progress. As I have said over and over again, our common mission must be to prepare our people for the 21st century, to master the challenges and seize the opportunities of this remarkable time. I believe the American people are coming to see that and coming to believe that as we pass through this period of remarkable change, the future holds far greater rewards than risks if our people, our government, and our other institutions are ready for tomorrow. In these past months, we have seen how the politics of the vital center can work to make progress on many of our most difficult problems. We ratified the Chemical Weapons Convention, a landmark treaty that will protect our soldiers and our citizens from the threat of poison gas. We reached agreement in Madrid to open the doors of NATO to Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, while creating a stronger partnership with Russia and Ukraine to build a Europe that is undivided, democratic, and at peace. These past months have been a remarkably fruitful time for bipartisan action in the national interest, and I think we have to continue that work. I should mention, too, that we worked in a bipartisan fashion to maintain our normal trade relationships with China, reaching out to a quarter of the world's population while making our differences with the government over human rights and other matters clear. These are major accomplishments, all achieved with support of Americans, both Democrats and Republicans. They have strengthened our nation. Yesterday, we took an historic action to eliminate the annual budget deficits we have been seeing and piling up since 1969. The first step toward that was taken back in 1993, when we abandoned supply-side trickle-down economics, opened a new chapter in fiscal responsibility with a new strategy of growth based on reducing the deficit, investing in education and training, opening the world to trade in American products and services. Even before yesterday, the deficit had been reduced by over 75% as a result of this strategy. But yesterday, when I signed into law the first Balanced Budget Act in a generation, we know that it will add to the long-term economic growth potential of the United States. We know, too, that it includes the largest increase in college aid since the GI Bill 50 years ago, the largest increase in children's health since Medicaid was enacted first over 30 years ago. Today, I have some more good news. Our efforts have led to an even lower deficit than we had previously projected. In this, the fourth year of the five-year economic plan adopted in 1993, we now expect the deficit to drop to $37 billion. Yet without the bipartisan balanced budget we just passed, my budget officials estimate the deficit would rise next year to $50 to $100 billion and stay at that level for years to come. With our bipartisan balanced budget plan, we now expect it not only to reach balance by 2002, but to have a surplus in excess of $20 billion and to be able to maintain that for several years thereafter. There are still big challenges and tough decisions that we have to make beyond the balanced budget, however, if we're going to keep our economy growing and keep our people fully prepared for the new century. To meet them, members of Congress from both sides of the aisle and Americans from all walks of life must summon the same will and spirit that led to the balanced budget. We have a lot of work to do in the rest of this year. First, if we expect to keep our economy strong and growing, we must continue to invest in the education and training of our people, and we must succeed in our push for high national standards and tests to make sure our students, our schools, and our teachers are doing the job. Second, we must tackle the tough issue of entitlement reform. We have to make tough choices to strengthen and protect Medicare and Social Security over the long run. They are the two most important social service innovations of the 20th century. This is not simply a matter of fiscal responsibility. It is also a matter of honoring the duties we owe both to our parents and to the next generation. The balanced budget bill I signed yesterday sets up a bipartisan commission to reform Medicare. This fall, along with the members of the Congress, I will appoint the members of the commission, and they will get to work. We'll also tackle other issues to strengthen our families, exploring ways to improve child care in America, and continuing our efforts to reduce the use of tobacco among our children. Third, we will grow our economy and create good jobs by continuing to open more foreign markets to our goods and services through tough, fair trade agreements. We must continue to reach out to the more than 95% of the world's consumers who live beyond our borders. That is why I will ask Congress to give me fast-track authority to negotiate new trade agreements that will extend free and fair trade to keep our economy going. Fourth, it is obvious that we cannot fulfill our obligations to future generations unless we also deal responsibly with the environmental challenge of global climate change. Growing our economy need not, indeed it must not, contradict our commitment to protecting the environment. When the nations of the world meet in Kyoto in December, we must all take concrete steps to address this problem. The United States must commit to realistic and binding limits on our emissions of greenhouse gases. The science demands that we act, and again, we owe it to our children. Finally, let me say, as I did in the State of the Union address, that one of our most critical pieces of unfinished business remains campaign finance reform. When Congress returns from its vacation, Senators McCain and Feingold have made clear that they will bring campaign finance reform legislation to the floor of the Senate. This will be the time of testing. The special interests and their allies have killed reform year after year, but this year, the eyes of America will be on the Senate floor. I will give my strong support to McCain-Feingold, and if the American people will give their strong support, I am determined that we can prevail. It should not be as easy this year as it has been in each of the 4 previous years to kill campaign finance reform with a Senate filibuster by a minority of the Senate. This year it is very important that every American know where every single elected federal official in Washington stands on this issue. Are you yes or are you no? It should be clear and unambiguous, and I believe if it is, we have a chance to succeed in passing the bill. All these challenges will require bipartisan cooperation. Many of them will require difficult decisions. But this balanced budget and the prosperity we are now enjoying gives us a rare opportunity to take these steps for the long-term well-being of our country. We can meet the challenges of the 21st century. We can have higher educational standards, entitlement reform, campaign finance reform, expanding trade, and a cleaner environment. This budget agreement shows that we can do all these things when we work together to find common ground. We have to carry this spirit into the fall for the hard work ahead. Now I'll be happy to take your questions, starting with Helen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the United States has avoided nurturing peace for a long time in the Middle East. Tinderbox, I'm sure that it's a way to go, you feel. But editorially, the Washington Post says your choices are, and if you'll permit me to read it, says, up to now, President Clinton has avoided confronting the implications of Mr. Netanyahu's reluctance to bargain territory for a Palestinian settlement. Now he must decide whether to minimize short-run frictions with the Israeli government or reach for a long-term peace. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, let me say that the Secretary of State gave a very important speech to the press club at noon today. I read the speech last night. I went over it with great care, and I am in full accord with what she said. Secondly, in this year alone, the United States helped to broker the Hebron Agreement. We have hosted all the leaders from the Middle East here. Dennis Ross has been to the Middle East twice. We have worked very hard on this. Indeed, there is no foreign policy problem to which I have given more of my personal time since I became president in 1993. But we have to do what we believe will be most effective. The question is not whether the United States or this administration on any given day or week is popular or not in any foreign capital. The question is, are we doing what is most likely to work? And sometimes reasonable people can disagree about that. Now, I have asked Dennis Ross to go back to the region to primarily discuss security. As Secretary Albright made clear, until the parties trust each other and until the Israelis believe that the Palestinian Authority is making 100% effort, which is different from 100% results, but making 100% effort on security, it is impossible for peace to proceed. If we can resolve that, then the Secretary of State will soon go to the Middle East with the ideas that we have developed for going forward. And let me make just one final point on this. You may want to ask some follow-up questions, but I want to make what I hope is a clear distinction. On the substance of the peace process, the parties still have to make the final decision. But on the process itself, how to get the process going again with some integrity, designed to restore confidence in both parties, I think the United States can and should offer its best ideas, and that is exactly what we intend to do, and that's what the Secretary of State's speech was designed to set the stage for today.
Well, the point of friction has been the settlements, and do you think you've been even-handed in that respect?
Well, I think we've made it clear to the Israelis that we don't think anything should be done which undermines the trust of the parties and violates either the spirit or the letter of the Oslo Accord, and which predetermines the outcome of final settlement issues under Oslo. I think we've made that clear. And I think that the Secretary of State's speech today was quite clear on that. But let me say, there is no parallel between bombs and bulldozers. You cannot draw a parallel. We cannot have an environment in which people believe the way to get what they want is to kill innocent people in a marketplace. Furthermore, I believe the people who are responsible for those terrorist bombs are the enemies of the Palestinian Authority as well, and I think they ought to see that. It is imperative that Mr. Arafat understand that those people are not his friends either. Those people do not want a peace. Their closest allies in terms of political objectives may be their most extreme enemies in Israel, who do not believe that peace is possible. The people that murdered all those people, those innocent civilians, are not trying to get a peace that they think is more favorable to the Palestinian or the Arab cause. They are trying to murder the peace process. And as soon as we all understand that and go back to work on it, then I think, we have a chance to make progress. But I also believe that the government of Israel clearly has a responsibility to try to carry its end of the load too. This has got to be a two-way street. Security first, then let's see both sides do what it takes to restore confidence. Yes. Sonia?
Mr. President, the tax cut and budget bills that you signed yesterday were criticized by your own Treasury Secretary as, quote, heavily laden with special interest provisions, close quote. You have the power to use the line item veto to take out some of those special interest tax breaks. Are you planning to exercise that power?
Well, the short answer is that I expect there will be some exercise of that. But let me tell you what we're doing. First of all, I have asked my staff and relevant cabinet members to review both the budget bill and the tax bill. And let me remind, I know that all of you know this, but just for the people that you're writing or speaking for, there are three areas in which the president can exercise the line item veto, three sets of legislation. In the tax bill, there are certain limited, and they're quite limited, special tax provisions that are subject to the line item veto. In the budget bill, there are certain special spending programs under the so-called entitlement umbrella that are subject to the line item veto. I must act on either one of them within 5 days from yesterday, excluding Sunday. That's what the law says. In addition to that, as the annual appropriations are passed, they too, the spending items within the annual appropriations, are subject to the line item veto. So what I've asked my staff and cabinet to do is to meet with me, first of all, make sure I am aware of the items that are subject to the veto in the tax bill and in the budget bill that I signed. And then the second thing we have to do is to make absolutely sure that none of these things that we don't think are very good were part of the agreement. That is, this was an agreement entered into in good faith, and I cannot use the line item veto on anything that our negotiators agreed to let go through. I think that's very important. And I want to bend over backwards to make sure there's no misunderstanding on that. Then after that, we'll have a category of items, and I will just go down and evaluate them and decide whether I think that they are sufficiently objectionable that they should be vetoed. Larry?
Mr. President, on this deficit reduction that you've just mentioned that has now fallen to $37 billion, doesn't it raise the question that in fact the budget could be balanced a lot sooner if you and Congress hadn't enacted $95 billion in tax cuts?
Well, let me say this. If we hadn't done anything, if we'd had no tax cuts and no other changes, our estimates are, keep in mind these tax cuts are over a 5-year period, our estimates are that we would have a deficit which would rise over the next 5 years and stay at about the level of $100 billion. So you can also say that if we hadn't spent $24 billion on children's health care, we could balance the budget. If we abolished spending on education, we could do it. The question is, can we do this in a way that also helps the American people and gives them some of the benefit of the prosperity that has been generated in the last 5 years? And let me say again, there's a lot of discussion about this tax cut. I want to make it two things clear. This tax cut is a small fraction of the size of the tax cut that was adopted in '81 that started us down the road to permanent structural deficits. A small fraction. Number two, 80% of this tax cut goes to three things which will benefit the vast majority of Americans: education, the child tax credit, and the initiatives to help isolated and distressed urban and rural communities. That's where 80% of this cut goes. Many people believe that the capital gains cut will also spur economic growth. Some people don't. As you know, that was a big priority for the Republicans. I believe that overall the tax package is a good and balanced one. I think the fact that we have a plan for a balanced budget and that we are providing these kind of tax cuts that will help people to raise and educate their children will actually contribute to economic growth because they are disciplined, they are limited, and they are part of a comprehensive strategy that ends in balancing the budget now in a surplus. That's what I believe. Bill?
Mr. President, what makes you believe that future Congresses will continue along the path to balance the budget in 2002 or to keep it balanced? And also, sir, in 1994, you referred to extreme Republicans who want tax cuts and spending increases and balanced budgets, all this ridiculous stuff, quote unquote. It seems to be what you got yesterday. I mean, you came here intending to stimulate the economy with government spending and to get universal health care. Why'd you change your mind?
That's not accurate. I also said that we would cut the deficit in half in 4 years. We did better than I said. We cut it by 75% in 4 years. But that's a very selective reading of my 1992 campaign. I also said that I would have to eliminate programs, cut the size of government by at least 100,000, and do more things that I believed we could reduce the deficit and increase targeted investment. And let me remind you that in this budget, let me just go through this quickly. When you adjust for inflation, all these departments with discretionary budgets are going to have to cut spending 10% during this budget. There are more entitlement savings in the Medicare program in this budget than ever in any budget since Medicare has been enacted, about $400 billion. There are new modest fees for home health care in the Medicare premium. So there will be this is not all increased spending. Some things will be increased, many things will be decreased. And If we do it, we'll produce growth. Let me just make one other point. I'm convinced that if we did not pass this plan and did not say to the world and to the investor community we're going to balance the budget, it would slow economic growth. Hey, let me answer your final question. Why do I think subsequent Congresses will stay with this? Because I think that they have seen what happens if you do this. If you have fiscal responsibility and you're running a balanced budget, when you have good economic times, then you get rewarded in the markets and your economy does well. If you spend a lot of money you shouldn't be spending and you run big deficits in good economic times, the international financial markets will punish the United States. They will drive up interest rates. They will drive down the value of our stock market. They will weaken our economy, and they will make the deficits even worse. So I believe that the markets are sending us a clear signal. Allison, and then David.
Mr. President, you said that the American people should know where every political figure in Washington stands on campaign finance. Yet at the same time that you've called for an end to soft money, you continue to raise it for your party.
I certainly do, and I'm proud of it.
Well, let me ask you
I do. I plead guilty to that. I don't believe in unilateral disarmament. And I don't think, suppose I said to you, advertising is bad, your newspaper should stop advertising while everybody else does it. And trust me to tell everybody what a good newspaper you have. Just stop it. Just say no. You live in a competitive world. We live in a competitive world. And notwithstanding what the image may be, constantly, and you see again in the press today, the Republicans raise more money, raise more big money, and raise more money from non-citizens than the Democrats do. But we have to raise enough to be competitive. I am doing my best to try to build things like our Women's Leadership Forum, which is the most exciting thing that the Democratic Party has going now in the way of fundraising. People who give modest contributions involving women, the smaller businesses, new business people coming in. But I think it would be a grave mistake for us to abandon any attempt to compete. That would only ensure that the Republicans would never pass campaign finance reform. And I might say, you know, I'm trying to stay in a good humor about this, because if I were sitting at home and I were a Republican senator with a lot of influence in this, I'd say, hot dog, this is the question I have been praying for. We will never be held accountable for this. We can kill it one more time. We've killed it 4 years. Let's go for 5. That's what and I hope that won't be it. I mean, I think we ought to, you know, I will live under any set of rules that are there. But the lesson that we have learned is there's too much money in this system, but it's because of the cost of communication. It's the cost of communication that's driving this up. And so we have got to get free airtime or reduced airtime, and we've got to get campaign finance reform. And I hope we can. Let me just say, look at what we have done just since the first of this year. We want the FCC to deal with the issue of free airtime. I have appointed an advisory committee to explore that. I've asked former Vice President Mondale and former Senator Nancy Kassebaum Baker to head a national group to get citizens involved in campaign finance reform. I have asked the FEC to reconsider the rules that it made, which made soft money possible in the first place, and I'm supporting Kennedy Kassebaum. I don't know what else I can do, but I will not at the same time bankrupt the Democratic Party and say that I want you to have no money, even though if we do our very best, we're still going to be outraised and outspent 2-to-1. I don't think that is a responsible thing to do. I think that would be wrong. I think, you know, this money was given to us by the people that contributed money to us, by and large, were people that could have made a lot more money contributing to the Republicans, they thought, because they were the party for the capital gains tax, the estate tax relief, and all of that. They did it because they believed in what we were doing. And they gave us a chance to fight for things like this children's health program, this education program, and all the things we did. I just think we can't afford to just lay down our capacity to compete when what we really have to do is all agree to live under a new set of rules, which I will happily agree to live under. David?
Mr. President, you spoke of entitlement reform, but the Medicare Commission will not return its recommendations until the spring of 1999. And I'm wondering two things. First of all, in that context, 1 year before the presidential elections begin, do you really believe that there'll be the political will to do something drastic vis-a-vis Medicare reform? And number two, on Social Security, you've had a chance to think about this for several years now. Can you tell us what your recommendations might be in terms of keeping Social Security from going bankrupt?
Well, first let me deal with the Medicare issue. It was the decision of the Congress to have the commission report back in 1999. And I would have gladly accepted a 1998 reporting date because I believe that we cannot make changes in Social Security or Medicare that are significant unless there is bipartisan support. And I believe if there is strong bipartisan support, you can do it in an election year as well as in a non-election year. But I think the fact that March of '99 is 18 months before a presidential election, more or less, I haven't counted the months, maybe a little more, is not dispositive. I think that first of all, this commission may decide to make interim recommendations, and then we may take a series of steps. Secondly, if they make a package recommendation at the end, and it has the support of all these appointees, and I can assure you I'm going to work hard to appoint distinguished good people to this commission that will inspire confidence in our citizens, then I think the Congress will be prepared to act on it. And I feel the same way about Social Security. I've not yet decided exactly what the timing ought to be on that because we need to work it out with the congressional leadership in both parties in terms of how they're dealing with Medicare. But let me make the point again. These systems would work for a longer period of time than they otherwise will, but for the fact of the baby boom and the fact that all seniors are living longer. Now that's, as I said before, that's a high-class problem. People are living longer and living better. And that's what we should want for our society. That's a good thing. But when the baby boomers retire, because of the length of life of senior citizens, there will come a time when there'll be almost only two people working, just a few more than two people working, a fraction over two, for every one person on these programs. And you asked me, do I think that we will take the steps necessary to reform them? I do, and I feel that for a simple reason. Number one, and I'm the oldest of the baby boomers, I don't believe that our generation wants to ask our children to make drastic sacrifices to support us because we wouldn't take modest steps now that don't have to affect the people that are now retired at all. If we can deal with this over a longer period of time, and in ways that don't affect people who are now retired at all, or at least in a very minimal fashion. And I think it's an intergenerational obligation, and I expect it to be fulfilled. I'll be surprised if it's not. Yes, Mike.
President, the stock market has been soaring in recent months. Are you worried or concerned about whether ordinary Americans understand the risk involved in their investments at this time?
Now, anything I say is wrong, right? If I say yes, the market drops tomorrow. If I say no, someday it'll drop and I'll be a heel. Well, let me say this. It is an astonishing fact. I mean, what was the market? When I took office, the market was 3,200. So it's gone up at an unprecedented rate to unprecedented heights. But that increase has been accompanied by a very brisk growth in our economy and strong growth in productivity. And keep in mind, most ordinary citizens who are invested in the stock market are invested through their retirement funds and mutual funds and things of that kind. And the people who are managing those funds are managing huge amounts of money and presumably do have very...
Couple hours.
It's more than I had. Clay here.